Alright, the MultiVersus alpha's wrapped up, and one of my patrons was generous enough to provide me with a spare code, so I was able to get into the last few days of its run. To make my circumstances clear, I have briefly spoken with one of the developers who told me he was a fan of my work, but in terms of material compensation, I haven't received any in any way for covering the game. This applies to Rushdown Revolt as well, another platform fighter I'll briefly be mentioning which I have done compensated work for in the past. Because I didn't have access to the full duration of the alpha, I decided to mostly stick with Wonder Woman to give myself as much of an opportunity to get a handle on the game as possible, although I did try everyone's moveset and also used some Shaggy online. I chose Wonder Woman as my main because she's relatively simple and is apparently a solid choice in both singles and doubles, but far more than anything else just because she's easily my favorite character right now. My theoretical favorite platform fighter archetype is heavyweight projectile sword fighter, and she's in the tank class, has a sword, and she's also got the Lasso of Truth, which is functionally mostly a really cool projectile. There's even shades of Pit and Palutena from Smash with her shield moves, which I also love. Just overall, she's about as up my alley as I could have asked for. Alright, with the circumstances out of the way, let's dive in. Aside from the impressive roster, I think the most immediate hook with MultiVersus is its production value. Character models essentially all look great. I think Wonder Woman, the Tasmanian Devil, and Harley Quinn are exceptionally good right now, but there are none that look off-putting to me. And the art style blends these massively different characters together as well as you could ask for. Just compare the universes Arya Stark and Tom and Jerry come from, and then look at how well they match up side by side, as compared to the somewhat coherent source material of most Smash characters or something like Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, or the uniformity of largely original rosters that many indie platform fighters use. Warner Brothers really is going to be pulling from all over the place, and I think they found a good way to make them all fit while still having some life in the aesthetic. Animation work is generally also very nice, technically solid, and very expressive and full of personality, which of course is one of the areas where a deep wallet tends to be the most noticeable. Another of these areas would be voice work, and considering the level of talent on the roster, it's no surprise that the voice acting quality here is absolute top-notch.
The stretchy dog will make a fine trophy on my wall.
The addition of character-specific banter is nice as well, although at this point there hasn't been nearly enough recorded to avoid hearing the same lines a bit too often. This is even worse for the generic character intro dialogue.
My mother told me that fighting does not make you a hero. My mother told me that fighting does not make you a hero. My mother told me that fighting does not make you a hero. My mother told me that fighting does not make you a hero.
It gets tiring kinda quickly. Combat generally sounds very punchy as well, but this doesn't always translate to combat feeling punchy. The low hit stun, or a character's inability to act after they're launched, as well as the generally low damage numbers all contribute to a feeling of many attacks feeling overly limp. Which ones these will be aren't necessarily communicated particularly well by the animation either. Wonder Woman's down air is a significantly better kill move than her forward air, despite the forward air's animation making it look like it should be much more powerful. You can talk about balance as much as you want, that Wonder Woman is in the tank class, so kill power isn't her specialty, the down air is harder to connect with, particularly since its animation is actually extremely deceptive and there's no lingering hitbox on it, but the bottom line is that on a gut level, forward air simply doesn't feel that good to connect with, and it looks like it should. The animation itself is quite well done. Making aerials too effective is something MultiVersus does need to be very careful with, however, as the game is extremely air-focused by design. Every character gets 2 dodges, 2 specials, 2 jumps, possibly 3 with the right perk, massive extended leaps by jumping out of a grounded dodge, and a unique, interesting fastfall that can be initiated and cancelled at any time, even during an attack. On top of this, all aerials are essentially lagless and also don't get interrupted if you land. The animation is completed anyways. This last point isn't really an approach that many platform fighters take, but it actually feels good and surprisingly natural, and there's a lot of potential creativity with the unique air mobility MultiVersus brings to the table, but it feels much better suited for the doubles environment that MultiVersus is clearly making a heavy focus. In one-on-one matches, because dodges are so powerful, being intense burst movement options which also provide invincibility, and because end lag is hardly even worth mentioning, spamming one of your good moves and dodging away feels far too effective for how easy it is to implement. Now, admittedly, the meta is very young, especially for me. I certainly don't have hundreds of hours of the game under my belt, and like any strategy, this will fall apart against stronger players if it's made too predictable, but singles in MultiVersus does undeniably seem to have a bit of a flailing feel to it. This is especially true with how low the hit stun is, which leads to a lot of unsatisfying hits into an opponent instantly dodging away or mashing their own attack. I'm not asking for crazy extended combos, in fact I probably wouldn't wouldn't even want that, but there are too many instances here for my taste where it feels intuitively like you should be in more of an advantage state than you actually are. Now, in doubles, this is far less of an issue, and in fact the lowered hit stun becomes arguably necessary because there's no team attack enabled, meaning that every character is free to throw out a flurry of blows whenever they want to. The hit stun may well also be intended to prevent too many degenerate ping-pong combos between teammates, and the low hit lag may be designed to avoid taking control of your character away for too long in the face of outside factors. As mentioned, doubles is clearly a high priority for MultiVersus. It's been plastered all over the game's marketing, its Evo run is going to use doubles, and it's also clearly a prominent part of the character's movesets, which are refreshingly unique in that respect and a highlight of the game. Move lists are relatively sparse in MultiVersus. There are no grabs, tilts and smash attacks have been consolidated into chargeable tilts, and back and forward airs are always the same move, but these are sensible decisions for a game that's going to be played with a variety of controllers, particularly ones which use only digital inputs such as a mouse and keyboard, and we've seen similar decisions made with other modern platform fighters. Diversity is also improved by having some normal moves act similar to special moves, like Wonder Woman's all-encompassing down tilt, which can also be powered up by shielding moves, or Batman's forward air and forward tilt throwing his batarang, and by having many special moves function differently on the ground versus in the air, and these special moves are where the design cores of the characters often shine through. The designs definitely take cues from the more complex concepts of modern platform fighters, and while I wouldn't necessarily say an average MultiVersus character is as deep as, say, the Rivals of Aether roster, there's still a very broad range of concepts and status effects on display that feel creative and yet still faithful to the source material, at least the material I'm familiar with. Many of these are designed with teamwork in mind, whether that's giving your teammate a shield, creating a tunnel that they can also access, etc., and in fact there are some characters where the support aspect is their primary focus, including Raindog, the one original fighter on the roster so far. It's a pretty bold move to completely invent one character that needs to slot in among some true titans of fiction, but I do like him, and online reception to him seems to be very positive from what I've seen. Admittedly, making it a cute dog is kind of cheating though. Platform fighters are inevitably going to be compared to Super Smash Bros. For many years still, and they constantly face a difficult tightrope walk where being too close to Smash has them branded as a copycat, leaving little reason to play them instead of Smash, but too alien will likewise make it a tough sell for players already used to the way Smash plays. In this aspect, I think MultiVersus greatly succeeds. It absolutely has its own identity. This is unmistakably not Super Smash Bros., and when I first picked it up, it felt a bit more foreign than I was expecting, but its unique feel also didn't take too long to get accustomed to. The focus on doubles was another clear attempt to draw a line between the series, particularly from a competitive sense, and to MultiVersus' credit, it handles doubles substantially better than any other platform fighter I've played. The format flows well, and the various synergies between different team comps is intriguing. I've frankly never really cared about doubles at any point in the past, but here, I genuinely do look forward to being able to play more of it down the line. The stages are also generally fairly well set up to accommodate doubles play in addition to singles, often featuring variants for both. And while I doubt that all of them will end up getting tournament use, whether because of size or overly intrusive hazards, the focus generally seems to be on making them reasonably straightforward without forcing them all to be completely sterile, which, as someone who thinks competitive Smash stage lists tend to be a bit on the boring side, is an approach I greatly appreciate. Now, with all of this said, there's still absolutely no world where I see myself ever playing doubles more than singles, regardless of the developer's intentions. There's zero chance that I'm alone or even necessarily in the minority here. Doubles is generally an extremely unwelcoming format from a spectator perspective, and it's hard to shake the feeling that this doubles emphasis is absolutely having a detrimental effect on the singles experience. As far as I can tell, the modes are probably going to have to be distinguished further from each other. Part of the way this may be doable would be with the game's perks system, which allows characters to be customized and could probably be utilized to distinguish more between singles and doubles variants of the characters. As is, the perks are largely, although not entirely, the same across both modes, short of a bonus that's applied if both teammates choose the same perk. And these perks are something of a mixed bag. A lot of the character-specific signature perks are exactly what I was hoping to see, introducing exciting new abilities that fundamentally change how the character plays. With Wonder Woman, I settled on the perk that made the tip of her lasso launch opponents out rather than pull them in, but I could also alter it so that I was pulled to the opponent instead, as one example. These are generally handled well, but most of the generic ones aren't particularly interesting, largely minor number tweaks, although there are some exceptions. Unlocking different perks as you play through the game is a concept I don't necessarily love, but it's not exactly a new concept in video games either. In MultiVersus though, the unlock rate doesn't seem that generous, especially if you have a clear main, and I don't like that matches can be made where one player is objectively more powerful than the other. At the very least, I think each character should start off with a full suite of perks unlocked by default, and the unlockables could serve as choices, as opposed to the current case where a player with a full perk sheet can go into matchmaking and face off against a player with none. This presumably wouldn't happen as often if there was a larger player count than a closed alpha can provide, but I'd prefer to see a more robust solution. Speaking of matchmaking, Player First Games claims to be trying to create one of the best online experiences in the medium, and even in these early stages, I'd say they're well on their way. Despite the limited player count of a closed alpha, the rollback netcode feels extremely robust for the most part. Rushdown Revolt is the only other platform fighter I've played which feels quite this smooth online, and even the occasional one-bar connections I ran into were almost all surprisingly playable. This is going to be essential for the design of the game, which between a cosmetics route and some view systems that are limited to one player's screen, is clearly going to be leaning on online play heavily. And here, I have no serious concerns. It takes a bit too long right now to get into games, there are too many screens and timers interrupting things, but details like this are the kind of things that can and do get fixed in alpha tests, and I wouldn't necessarily say they're worth lingering on. The same can be said for the few bugs I came across, character and perk balance, or the absurd UI, although this really does need to be dealt with. Multiple tiny ability cooldown meters which use the same white on yellow color scheme zipping across the screen, this is just unacceptable in its current state. I know it's customizable, and the amount of customization available is impressive, including accessibility for colorblind players, which is probably why yellow was chosen as the player scheme to begin with. That said, this is presumably the interface the developers want us to be using, and it's beyond unreadable right now, even in singles. The various text pop-ups to indicate character states, however, as well as prominent damage numbers, are quite good. Ultimately, MultiVersus is an alpha, and it does feel like one, but the core of the game is largely in place. Designs are interesting, production values are high, and at least many aspects of the gameplay already feel very strong, although this is the department that concerns me most at the moment. It feels like a diamond in the rough, rather than a game made by a team that doesn't understand the genre. And while it undeniably needs some more time in the fire, it's easily the most optimistic I've ever been about a platform fighter besides Smash and Brawlhalla truly breaking into the mainstream. There seem to be serious attempts to support the community, certainly more than Nintendo has ever done for Smash, and the developers are extremely active on social media right now, which is always good to see. There's a reasonable chance one of them will see this video, so if you are from Player First Games, I'm happy to be able to say, hey, I like your game. I love platform fighters, and I think this has potential to be one of the greats. Thanks for watching, everyone, and let me know what you think about MultiVersus right now. Likes and comments are a huge metric YouTube uses to decide whether a video should be passed around to more people, so if you think this deserves it, much appreciated. There's another MockRock Talk video here, video on my main channel about Smash's comeback mechanics below, and patrons, YouTube members, and Twitch subs get perks like early videos and Discord access. Later, people.